So with the joys of homeschooling, I've been flung out into the caravan again. At least it's quiet here, I suppose. Anyway, a few days ago I posted a video when I was standing on Ben Aculash looking over the buckle. I'll pop the link up to the top there for you to go and have a look at it. Quite a nice video, go and have a look at it. The final shot, I'd had the boulder in the foreground, and to finish the actual shot itself I had to do some focus stacking. And I thought it would be quite nice to do a quick little video on how to focus stack. Okay, here are the three shots I'm going to use. This one here, and this one there. And I'm going to show you how to focus stack these and pop them into Lightroom first, and then you can transfer them over to Photoshop. Before we start, I want to show you where I focused on these three shots. So here are the three shots I've already transferred over to Photoshop. Okay. And what you can see, they're okay shots. I wouldn't say they were great, and it was a long walk just to get this, to be honest. But what you can see is here is the boulder in the foreground here. So you can see that where the little arrow's pointing, that's where I focused on the first shot. Okay, and then on the next shot I focused, because you need something fairly contrasty, so I focused on the woodland a bit further on in the distance here, and that was where the second shot was focused. And then if we look at the third shot was all the way over at Lagingarve Cottage here. Again, nice contrasty area, and that's what allowed me to focus there. Good. Now what you can do is you can zoom into these three shots, and if I get into this first one where I focus very close, and I'm going to zoom right into it, and I'm going to drag over here, and there's a little car here which I thought was quite useful. So I'm going to pop that car, I'm going to come in a little bit closer. I don't want to go too pixelated, just about getting the pixels there, you can just see them. Okay, so we can have a look at that car. Now that's quite a long way away, and a long way away from where I focused. And as you can see, it's slightly blurred, and the way to see that is if we come into the last shot. Actually, I'm going to use the second shot where I focus closer to the trees. And I'm going to come all the way into here, so you can see where I focused there, and I'm going to scroll back up. And I'm going to come back to the car, and I'm going to come in a little bit closer, and you can see the difference. So this is the one focusing very close. Just going to move it up a wee bit. So that's focusing very close to the boulder, so that's the foreground where I focused, and this shot is where I focused on the trees itself, not too far away from this car. And there is a significant difference. If you look at that one, it's quite blurred and a bit soft, and if I look at that one, it goes a bit sharp again. It's not pin sharp because obviously I'm a long way away from the camera, and I'm zoomed right in there and almost getting pixelated, but you can see that difference. And that is the problem when you're focusing with things that are very close to the foreground, is the background will go out of focus. Okay, so the only way to achieve this shot, to make sure everything is as sharp as you can get it throughout the shot, is to focus stack and take those several shots at different focus locations. Okay, so let's start the process of focus stacking. So I'm in Lightroom, and I'm going to pick my three photos. So here is the first image, and if I press the command button or control if you're in Windows, and I'm going to click on all three. Okay, then I'm going to slowly move up to photo in Lightroom, and I'm going to go to edit in, and this is important, you must make sure you select edit as layers, so open as layers in Photoshop and not edit in Photoshop. Okay, so we've got to select open as layers in Photoshop. click on that, and then we've got to let Photoshop boot on up. And this is good that they both interact now. Lightroom and Photoshop both interact. So we're going to send it into Photoshop first, play around with the focus stacking, and then we'll fire it back into Lightroom to complete the edit. So here is the camera raw being read, and here is my Photoshop. And as you can see, the computer takes a bit of a while, but it's thinking about it. As you can see, as the shots come in, you'll see that the clouds slightly move a little bit, and obviously in between those shots the clouds obviously moved, and it's a bit tricky to sort of, if you're bracketing with exposure, it's fairly easy. You can just do your bracketing on your camera and you can take the shots very quickly, but with focus stacking you kind of have to be very careful where you're going to focus. So you have to manually focus on the rock, for example, then manually focus on the trees, and then manually focus on the cottage. Well, that takes time, and if it's a windy day the clouds move over, and normally this would be a problem, but for me today it's not, because we're going to show you how to sort of get over that. Okay, the first thing to do then is to auto align all the layers, and what we're trying to achieve is to make sure that there's no subtle movement in between the two photographs. So we're going to line them all up, and the computer does a great job of this. Photoshop does a good job of this. So just let the computer do the work. So we're going to select the three photos, again clicking on them and pressing the command button or control if you're in Windows, and then we're going to fire on up to edit in Photoshop, and then we're going to go auto align the layers, and then all we're going to do is we're just going to keep it on auto, and we're just going to let the computer do the work for us. So here we go. Now it is really important, even if you think they're very close, don't jump this step. It's very important to make sure you actually auto align your layers. Okay, so that's all the photos auto aligned. Now you've got two ways of focus stacking from here on. You can let the computer work it out for you, and most of the time it gets it pretty bang on. Sometimes it doesn't. So I'm going to show you that way first, and then the second way is to manually blend the layers using layer masks. Okay, so let's have a look at the first easy way and let the computer sort it out. I've got all my three selected, my images selected. They're now auto aligned, and I'm going to scoot on up to the edit button, and I'm going to go auto blend layers. Okay, so I'm going to seamless tones and colors and context aware, and I'm going to just stack the images. It's not a panorama, so here we go. So what the computer's doing now is it's trying to pick up which photo has the sharpest image, and it'll pick up all the different images and then mask them all together and blend them all together to get a sharp image throughout. And as we come down, you can see that it's been picked up, and there's the three images there, and here's our masking, and as you can see, it's picked up the foreground here, which is the sharpest in this photograph, but pretty much left everything else. The second photograph, it's picked up the intermediate area and pretty much actually used that most of the image, to be honest. And the top image is just, it's used mainly the sky and little bits around here, but mainly the sky. Okay, and that's quite what we would expect. This image is where I focused on the foreground. This is where I focused on the intermediate trees, and this is where I focused on the cottage. And it's probably done a pretty good job. And if we come on in and zoom on in here and have a look at it, and we scoot around the image, the boulder itself is looking pretty sharp. I'm very zoomed in here, and it's looking pretty okay. Probably could benefit with a bit more later on, but not bad. And as I come up here and scoot into the car, yes, that's definitely the sharpest image of that. Okay, I do have this horrible truck coming in here, so I'll be aware of that when I blend the layers. Okay, the second way to do this is to do it manually, and that gives you more control on what selection of images you want to make the final photograph. Now what I've got is, I know that 8367 was the shot looking at the boulder here. 8368 was where I focused on the trees, and 8369 was where I focused on the cottage. And the thing is these are actually upside down. I need these the wrong way around because we're going to use 8367 as the background. So we're going to come all the way down to the bottom there and put 8367 on the bottom, and I'm going to put 8368 intermediate. So just be aware of that when you bring those in. Sometimes it's the wrong way round. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to blend the first two images, and then I'll do the other two second. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that third image and I'm going to blend these two together. So to do that, I select the second intermediate image, I select the layer mask, so add a layer mask or vector mask, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert that. So I'm going to press Command I, and that turns it into black, and that means it's transparent. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a brush tool. I can come up here and grab my little brush tool if I want, and I'm going to make sure that the brush tool has a really soft edge to it, nice and soft. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that happens. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and start blending this. Okay, making sure my opacity is 100%, and I'm going to blend all the way through here, and I can go to the top, it doesn't make any difference, but we're going to blend all this. Be careful around this area here, obviously we don't want that in there. Good. Okay, so I think that should do us, and as you can see now I've got this mask here, and you can see that this mask is masking the first image on the top, and we can check that that's okay. So we're going to zoom on into that car, and if we come over to the car again, over we go, there we go, and you can see, coming a bit more, it's relatively sharp, it is going pixelated, it's a long way away, and if I turn that mask off, you can see it goes all soft. Okay, so I've now masked over the softness in that focus. And then I can do exactly the same for the third image, so I can come on back out again. Oops. And I'm going to choose the 6.9, I'm going to make it active, and I am going to add another layer mask. I'm going to invert it, pressing Command I or Control I, and then I've got my brush tool here, and what I'm going to do then is I'm going to brush the sky, and I'm going to, you see the sky changing as the clouds moved, and I'm going to make sure that this area here, all this area here, is done on the third image where I focused a lot higher. Excellent. Okay, and I can now zoom on in, into the cottage and see if there's any difference. I think it would be fairly subtle because we've probably gone into infinity there. So there is the cottage now on using the third image, and if I unclick it, yeah, it's not much difference, hard to see. But that's good. So what I've got now is I've got a sharp image throughout all of the photograph, and the reason is I've focused 3 different locations and stacked them all together very easily. So now the final thing is I need to do is I need to go to my layers, and I'm just going to merge visible. So merge visible, and that should make me one image all focus stacked. So it really is so easy. It is as easy as that. You can use either the computer's way of doing it, or you can do it manually. And that means that anytime now you're in the field and you're trying to put that foreground, and you've got a big distance and a big depth within the photograph, you should never be concerned about the focus of everything, because you can focus stack throughout, and it only takes a few minutes to correct that. So the final thing to do in Photoshop is go up to File and then Save. And once you've done that, you can then go and open back up Lightroom, and if you have a look at Lightroom, the images are there, but also there is an extra image there, which is a TIFF file, and that is our focus stacked file. like that, give me a thumbs up, and you can click on the subscribe button lower down, and if you want to click on the bell notifications, that way you'll never miss any more content. Now, we're based up in the Scottish Highlands, just a couple of hours north of Glasgow, so if you ever want to come and book a tour with us, go on our website, glencoephotography.co.uk. We'd love to see you up here and show you how beautiful this area is.